Hi listeners, editing note here. This is part 2 of our recording with Erik. The conversation continues on the topic of AI.
Some people, maybe it's with their fingers crossed and hoping that it's just the bubble's going to burst kind of thing and it's going to go away. I personally don't think that's going to happen. But what would you kind of respond to that with, Nick?
I think you can see just in terms of how integrated it is in various billion-dollar software apps that that's not going to be the case.
Mm.
Gmail, billion-dollar app, it's right there at the top where Gemini is now summarizing everything. You can turn it off, but it's on by default, so most people probably have it on. Amazon ads, you go into the Amazon ads interface now, they have this little bar that you can type in questions about your data, which by the way doesn't work very well at this point, so I wouldn't use it, but they're clearly working on that and something that they're deploying in, again, Amazon ads, $1 billion, tens of billions of dollars. Facebook ads. Facebook ads is the core of Meta's business. They are trying to automate it so that they can make the entire creative via AI. That's why there's so many AI features that are enabled by default when you go into the Meta ads now. Are those features very good at this point? When you're running traffic ads as an author to Amazon, no. Most of them are going to be negatives in terms of the performance. But the reason that Meta is making them the default is that they want the data on how those perform and they're using it to train their AI and improve it. And they're making a bet that that's the future, where if they can get their ad platform to make good creatives or get you 80, 90% of the way there, that's a huge advantage over other advertising platforms. And remember that Facebook, they're competing for your ad dollars versus Amazon. And Amazon's competing against Facebook and Google and LinkedIn and everywhere else that has a pay-per-click platform, which is funny to think about because these companies are so gigantic that it seems that they're immune to competition. But that's why there's so much investment in these types of AI ventures where the stakes are billions of dollars for these companies. And if Meta's algorithm and their ad platform, if that declines in performance because Amazon has better AI related targeting or some sort of software feature that allows advertisers to get better results and get those results easier, then the ad dollars are going to flow toward those other ad platforms. So I don't see this stopping in the future. I think it will change shape in terms of the flavor of the AI that is used. Right now, a lot of these things are powered by large language models in terms of the features that you see bolted on to software. And I don't know what Amazon and Facebook are using, to be clear, for their ad platforms. But when a new piece of software or an existing piece of software, when it says, hey, now we're AI powered, it's really oftentimes a poorly added ChatGPT type of very useless feature in quotes to get people to either sign up for the service because now they can say they're AI powered or they're trying to get venture capital money. But I think that's the bubble aspect where people are chasing that money. And the same thing happened 30 years ago with the rise of the internet.
Yeah.
And people were skeptical about that. The internet is a fad. Obviously, we're having this discussion over the internet where I'm talking to you from the United States and you're in New Zealand, and we can see this, the power that that has opened up in terms of the new ways to communicate and share information, and it has been a massive net benefit. But along the way, there were things that weren't quite ready for prime time, where they had grocery delivery services and all these pets.com, I believe, was kind of the famous bubble example from that era, where they had just the numbers didn't make any sense. And you have a lot of that stuff now where people are just saying, hey, we're AI powered, and they're throwing money at it. So you'll see that type of thing. And I think we're approaching that kind of bubble bursting, 1998, 1999 type of thing, where you're at the peak, and then there's been a lot of criticism of AI recently. So you'll see that. And I think people who are against AI and not using it at all will potentially take that as a sign that it's no longer going to be something that is part of our businesses and part of our lives. But it's here to stay. And at this point, just the amount of capital that's been outlaid means that it would be hard to remove these features from the various software products. And all these companies that are huge companies are making really substantial bets on it. Amazon, for example, they've invested a bunch of money in Anthropic, and they're also investing a bunch of money in their own AI stuff. So just all these companies that are the backbone of the internet, they are betting on it, which means that as solopreneurs and small business owners who use these companies for various services and partner with them, for example, for distribution on Amazon, that means that you're along for the ride, and you're on the elephant's back, and whatever the elephant decides to do is the direction that you're going in. And
it's a good analogy.
It's a great analogy, actually.
I'm just going back to what you were talking about before. I just really like the way, because marketing is such a big topic for us here on the podcast, and I know it's one of the topics that people are always interested in. It's the one where we get the most views. And when you talk about taking away pain points for marketing, using AI to take away to do the things that the boring, the things that we hate doing, that use up our brain space. That just makes a lot of sense to me in terms of that. And not doing it to do the things that we love, which for me personally is always the writing. Like, that's
I guess almost a release, actually, hearing that. It was almost like, no, that's 100% right, because there are so many tasks that you're like,
like, for example, you can download your Amazon ad spreadsheet and ask it to analyze which is the most effective for you, that kind of thing.
And that's a good example of something where it's going to give you very official sounding output, where it's going to be like, I know what's going on here, and it's going to be not particularly useful because it's been trained on the entirety of the Amazon ads knowledge on the internet, from Reddit, blog posts, and it's mashing everything together. And you kind of get this weird average of things that one, aren't applicable to books, because advertising shoes and socks and everything else on Amazon is a bit different than advertising the books. But two, you also just get this mix of opinions that ultimately don't yield the insights that you're looking for. However, to that point, you can take a specific resource that you trust and have read. And I mentioned that specifically because what happens with AI is people start feeding the AI resources that they haven't gone over themselves. So they don't know what's in it. They don't know whether it's good or bad, whether it resonates with them. Same if my Amazon ads advice, if you think that that's good, if that resonates with you, then what you can do is you can take the newsletters and you can, one, have it walk you through that. But two, you can also, if there are equations and things like that, then you can have it analyze the ads using that. And it's going to be much better because it's going to be specific to the book domain. And it's also going to be something that you have gone through and you know what it's using to draw those conclusions. So you can also see when it's wrong, because it will be wrong at points. And it can be useful to get 90% of the right answer and 10% wrong if you know what's wrong. But if you don't, then that's probably a worse situation than where you started, where you had just nothing, because the 10% that's wrong can lead you in a very bad direction. And that's particularly important with the ads.
That's a really good point to actually emphasize. I feel like a long time ago, someone said to me, using AI is kind of like if you're someone who doesn't really know how to do the thing that you're trying to do versus someone who knows it and is using it to, the person who knows about, say, marketing or Amazon ads can look at the data and immediately see what's useful and what's not, or what the 10% is that's wrong. Someone who doesn't necessarily know an awful lot about Amazon ads doesn't know, and as you say, that causes problems. And so we still need to have that knowledge and that information. We still need to be the ones thinking about stuff. We still need to be the core of that, and we're just using it to kind of enhance around the edges. Is that fair? Like because I guess that's the one of my fears with AI is, I won't need to think anymore, and I like the thinking. I like the figuring stuff out, and I want to still have that as part of what I do. And people are using it to kind of think for them, and I guess in some way, do you get what I'm saying, and can you comment on that?
I think actually it enables you to think more deeply about the things that you care about. Rather than what I think ends up happening is that there are all these things that we have to do as a business owner. And usually in an organization, you would have a specific person for many of these. For example, with the creative for Facebook, you would have someone on your team who just makes the creatives. And then you would have another person who probably manages the ads. And then you might have another person who analyzes the ads. And then you might have another person who manages the database and tracks that. As someone who is running the ads, it'd be great if you had those 4 people to do all that for you. The reality is that there's not going to be enough money to hire someone to do all those things. And probably most indie authors don't want to manage that type of team anyway. That's not the goal. Like running lean and having a business where it's you or a couple people is probably more along the lines of what most people envision. And if you want to build something bigger, that's fine. But usually that's going to be something more akin to a publishing house, which most people aren't looking to necessarily build that. So what this allows you to do with the AI is think more deeply about the issues and problems and challenges and aspects of your business that you really care about deeply, because it's freeing time and mental resources from those other things that you don't really enjoy doing, and actually drain a disproportionate amount of the kind of cognitive resources that you have available. Because a lot of times what I find is that I'm not thinking about something, I'm ruminating on it, which seems similar, but there's a really big gap between rumination and reflection and actual thinking, where when you're ruminating on something, it's like you're running around in circles over and over again, and you're not making any progress. And it feels like you're in the woods during a snowstorm, and you just end up either in the same place or you end up in a different place, but you don't know where you're at. You do know that you're not making progress, and that doesn't feel good. And you're cold and you're hungry and you want to go home, but you can't figure out how to get home. And that's the way a lot of those tasks feel that we don't want to do. And then by the time you're at home, then you don't have time to do the things that you actually wanted to do. So in this analogy, the being at home and doing the things that you want to do are things like probably writing. Maybe you enjoy running ads, and maybe you enjoy analyzing the data. For me, for example, I've run a lot of ads for people. I don't really enjoy writing the ad copy. I'm sure there's someone out there who enjoys writing that. I would say that I've never met that person, but I'm sure that they exist. So if you really like writing blurbs and you really like writing ad copy and things like that, then don't outsource that to the AI, or figure out ways to enhance that. But I'd say from my perspective, that's not what I enjoy. So I use that to cut down on the production time dramatically there, come up with a lot of ideas really quickly, try to choose the best ones and then refine and revise them. And then what I'm most interested in is the analysis. And there, I'm not outsourcing most of it to the AI because it's not very good at the math. You can kind of tweak it with some prompts and get it to do the math correctly most of the time. But my question is always looking at the numbers, is this right? And that's a concern. Whereas with a spreadsheet, I never have that concern where I check the formula. If it's right, then it's going to be consistent. So I don't use it for the math aspect. What I find that it's really useful for is the qualitative analysis, meaning why did this potentially work? What are the patterns here between these pieces of ad copy? How can it help me break down what's going on? And it's been really useful for that. And for anybody who has followed the newsletters or my content for a while, you've probably seen the word qualitative come up much more than it has in the past, where I'm more focused on the why rather than the numbers. And that is a direct product of AI because AI has surfaced some things and highlighted some things that I wasn't as focused on before, but that has helped my analysis. So, and it's really unlocked some insights that I otherwise wouldn't be aware of. And that's partially because I'm not spending as much time on things that I don't enjoy as much. But it's also partially because it's a useful just discussion partner. It can spot things that I wasn't aware of. It can highlight things that because I'm so focused on the numbers, it's not something that my mind was naturally gravitating toward. You get in habits, you get in certain grooves that are useful, but it also means that you don't go down certain paths. And then you can throw the information into AI, and if it's useless, then it only costs you 30 seconds. But if there's something useful there, then you can explore that further, either with the AI, or oftentimes what I just do is I do it on my own, but it's useful for coming up with ideas.
So that's really cool. So it's just thinking about the way you want to use it, right?
Yeah.
So we're coming to the close of the interview, but actually, one thing I felt like I wanted to talk about and we haven't yet. So I'm just hoping if you can summarize a few points really quickly, was some of the changes. I know this is a big topic. Changes that have happened in Facebook ads this year. Some of the big things that because they have made some big changes, haven't they? That and it's all down to AI and the things that they're doing that you've already kind of explained to us. Is there any tips that you can give people, or just
The buzzword right now with Facebook is Andromeda. So you'll see that talked about in author groups and also any blog posts, just generally about Facebook, any content about Facebook. If it's talking about how Facebook has updated things, then it's probably going to mention Andromeda, and that's just Facebook's internal term for the kind of new AI / algorithmic updates that they've rolled out over the past year or so. And the main things that have happened that have affected us as authors over the past year, there's going to be the audience updates where Facebook now has removed most of the author interest targets. So before, if you were a romance author, you could target E.L. James or Nora Roberts. If you were a thriller author, you could target Lee Child, James Patterson. Pretty much every author target is gone. There are a handful of exceptions, but what that means is that the best practices before were just to target authors, and that's what I found worked most consistently. And I always recommended audience testing, but to be honest, very few people did it. And now, if people didn't do that, it has caught up to them. So to your point earlier, the foundational skills are more important now than ever. And being able to test audiences using A/B testing, not the built-in Facebook feature called A/B testing, just for clarification. You don't use that to run tests. You can, it's just very expensive. But the idea of A/B testing, where you have one ad and then you change one variable, which is the audience, in the other ad, and then you can test them and compare the performance. That's something that a lot of authors didn't want to do because they don't enjoy testing. That has come back to haunt them with this update because now they can't test audiences, which is mandatory, I would say. You can't really get away with not testing the audiences. There's just too much variance across different books and what performs well and what doesn't. And so the other thing with Andromeda is that you'll see this in the Facebook kind of official announcements, I believe, is that they want more creative diversity, meaning that they want you to run different ads and have multiple ads running. And that allows their algorithm to target people who are most interested in that specific type of ad. So what a lot of people try to do is that they try to test a little bit and then run just one ad on Facebook, or they don't test at all and they just run one ad on Facebook. And that was never a good way to either get great performance in the moment or long term, where that would burn out the ad very quickly because it's getting the majority of the ad spend. If you had a book that responded well to Facebook ads, you could kind of escape with that approach and have it work okay or even reasonably well. But now running multiple ads is going to help you more than it did in the past, but it was always helpful. We're testing different ideas and different angles for the ads and different images and different pieces of copy. That was going to help you find what resonated with the audience the best. And that hasn't changed. I think one of the reasons why the update, where I've been surprised at how much it's impacted authors, one of the reasons I've been surprised is because these are all just foundational things that as an ads manager, you're going to be doing them quite a bit. But also as someone just running your own ads, even if you're not running ads for other authors, it's something where you should be testing audiences, testing different creatives, because it's going to improve the performance. And fewer people than I thought were doing that, which isn't surprising in retrospect. It's just that if you're looking for a reason why performance has dropped, that's probably the most common one, where people just aren't testing at all. And then if they are testing, they aren't testing as much as they think that they are. And for some context there, what I recommend is an approach that I call 5x5, where you take 5 images and 5 pieces of copy, or 5 images and 5 headlines. So you don't have to come up with that many unique creative assets, but you can get 25 unique ads out of it. And then you do that once a week or once every other week, which sounds like an insane number. But once you start doing it, it probably takes you about an hour, hour and a half. And what you start to realize was that the insane thing was running one ad and crossing your fingers and really hoping that it would work, because you start to see just the gap in performance between the ads. And then you start wishing that you had a time machine and could go back and be like, I wish I was running more ads and testing them, because it also unlocks other things elsewhere where you get a better understanding of the audience. You get a better understanding of how to write really crisp blurbs that resonate with the audience. You get a better understanding of how to commission better covers because you're seeing the types of images that resonate with your audience. And so it has these spillover effects across all aspects of marketing. But with the ad specifically, it's going to help you quite a bit. But that's not really a change. That was always going to help you. I would just say now it's going to really be much more important, because Facebook wants you to run different creatives, and they're using that to help target the audience. So the audience targeting is the biggest one, and that's the one that people have struggled with the most. So if you're struggling with that, test audiences. And if you can't find an audience that works, be prepared to test 25 or 50 different audiences. Not all at once. I would recommend testing them in blocks of 5, just because then the data becomes much more manageable for analysis, particularly if you haven't analyzed the ads before and you want to use a metric called cost per unit to analyze those. So again, people underestimate the amount of testing that's necessary, and you may have to test 25, 50 audiences. And you may find at the end that you haven't found anything that works and you need to go on to the next book. And that's part of it. So the audience, that's the biggest one. And then the other one, it's probably 1A and 1B, are the AI features, which Facebook refers to as Advantage Plus creative enhancements. And so those allow Facebook, when they're on, to swap the position of, say, the top copy, which they refer to as the primary text, with the headline, or run the ad without the headline or without the copy, make various changes to the creatives. Some of those are big changes, like the text one that I just mentioned. Some of them are much smaller changes. You want to turn those off. At this point, you can still do that. They made it much more difficult to turn those off over time. And the general sense that I'm getting is that eventually they're going to not allow you to do that, because what they're trying to do is build up a bunch of data on how those automated creative tweaks perform. Because right now, even the big ones where it doesn't run the ad with the headline or the copy or something like that, or swaps those out, that's still pretty far removed from their end goal of being able to create the entire creative aspect of the ad, meaning the image, the copy. I'm assuming the idea is that you basically just give it a description of the product and then it goes and does the rest. It's still pretty far from that, even with the enhancements that they're rolling out with the Advantage Plus creative enhancements. But those things can still have a big impact on the performance. So as long as those are something that we can turn off, then I would recommend turning those off. Facebook will suggest various AI generated pieces of copy, headlines, images. You don't want to use any of those, not because I'm against using AI stuff. If you want to use AI, then just use ChatGPT or Claude. If you want to generate images, then I would use Adobe Firefly, because you know how Adobe Firefly was trained. If you want to use a different image generator, then there are options that will give you better output, but you don't know how those were trained. So just as a business owner, that's my preference to use Firefly. Firefly is also really good at generating stock type of images, because a lot of the training data is from Adobe stock library. So if you're looking for something for like a romance book or something like a thriller book where you're looking for more of a just person in a stock pose rather than a piece of art, then it has a good model for generating that type of output, because it has a lot of training data of similar things. So those are the two main things. And then there was one more, which I have to look up because I may have mentioned it already. Oh, the other thing, this isn't AI related. So I mentioned the two AI kind of related things with Andromeda. The other thing is just, as a creative approach in general, video is king on Facebook in 2025 and going into 2026. And this is something that Facebook, they made a really big push for this years ago. We're talking almost 10 years ago, where they were trying to emphasize the video on the platform, because they knew that video tends to be stickier than other forms of content in terms of keeping people on the platform. And they knew that with broadband becoming more widely adapted or adopted, and 3G, 4G, 5G, all those technologies coming in, people would have the ability to watch video, not just when they were at home. So I mentioned that because I'm sure some people are still debating whether they want to dive into the AI waters, and people have different opinions. about Facebook and whether it's beneficial for humanity as a whole with the social media platform and everything else. They have some of the smartest people in the world working there. And whether you hate Facebook or love Facebook, it can't be denied that they have really talented people who are at the forefront of the technological curve. And so they can read the tea leaves better than pretty much any of us can. And they were right about that before. And that's a major reason why their ad platform is so powerful and why their social media platform is still the most popular one in the world, I believe, from a user perspective. It's because they made a bet on video a long time ago. And now video is so ubiquitous that people think that that seems obvious. But in 2016, 2017, it wasn't nearly as obvious, in the same way that betting this amount of money on AI is not as obvious or as clear cut of a bet as it may seem to be 5 years from now. So that's something that they planted that seed 6, 7 years ago. And then probably around 2023, 2024, you really started to see the CPCs with the video just be so much better. And one thing that helped us as authors is that the CPCs for video are probably always lower and consistently lower than something like a stock image or an image with the book cover on it. The biggest problem for us as authors was that the video doesn't convert very well a lot of the time. So the attribution links being released in 2022, at the end of 2022, really helped there, where you could actually track the conversion. If you're not using attribution links, you need to be doing that with the Facebook ads, because that's going to tell you how each individual ad is converting, and you need to use a unique attribution link for each individual ad, because otherwise you can't compare the performance. But that's critical for the videos actually becoming much more usable for us as authors, because what happened before is that you could have video that performed well from a CPC perspective, but it was always a guessing game as to whether or not it was actually converting, and most likely it wasn't. Just for context on video, an author that I work with, they tested something like 350 videos or something like that, and 225, 250 of them or so converted at 0%. And that's an actual zero, not close to zero. There are plenty of others that converted not great. So that was out of the ones that ran, 2/3 of them didn't convert at all. So just if you're getting into video, I think, again, expectations. One, I just mentioned that they tested 350 creatives, but you can use this approach where you can make the videos somewhat modular in terms of, okay, it's not 350 totally unique videos. It's, you can have 5 different intros with 5 different musical songs in the background or whatever, audio tracks. And that gives you 25 unique ads. So applying that idea of the 5x5 approach, which I got, by the way, from a marketer named Maxwell Finn, that's really useful for taking a small number of creative elements and then creating a lot of different static image ads or videos, but it's especially useful with the video. So if you're getting into video, what I would recommend is focus on the script, and the script, people will refer to that as the captions. The script is just the text that runs over the video. So the, you know, she's a real estate tycoon. He's a billionaire, you know, whatever. And then like the next slide, and then the next slide, and the next slide, going on about, you know, will they get together? Will they won't? Will they won't they? Type of thing, right? If it was a romance one, to use a hastily cobbled together example. But
very well.
That's probably not compelling anybody to read that fictional book. But that's the script. So the script is the hardest thing to get people hooked on, and to get something that actually converts. Once you find something that converts there, then I would test the other elements. So the intro is probably going to have the next biggest impact. The intro is the first 3 seconds of the video. And then you have either the B-roll in the background. So you can have actual video in the background, or you can have a slideshow of static images. Either of those can work. So you can swap out those and say have 5 different intros with 5 different sets of B-roll, or 5 different intros with 5 different songs. The song that you play in the background can have a big impact on the performance because it can dramatically change the tone of the overall video. But the core idea here is that you want to focus on the script first, because that is going to have the biggest impact on the performance. A couple things that can help with the video conversion is one, putting free and Kindle Unlimited on the video, meaning like the actual first slide of the video, or just throughout the video, having that somewhere. That emphasizes that it's a book, and that can potentially help you. If you're wide, then you could say small town romance novel or small town romance book, whatever your genre is there, just emphasizing that it's a book. And then the ad copy, that's very limited in terms of what's displayed. So running a traditional piece of copy where you have your blurb or an excerpt or something like that doesn't really tend to have much of an impact on the performance with the video. It can with the static images. It can have a huge impact on performance there, but just the way the videos are displayed, it doesn't tend to have an impact on the performance with the video all that much. But what you can do with the ad copy is you can emphasize that it's a book. So again, you can echo that idea where you have free and Kindle Unlimited, or small town romance novel, new thriller book, etc., where you're hammering home that it's a book. And the number of characters that you have there is pretty limited. So you want to make it so that it's probably 4 or 5 words max, and under 40 characters. I think I'm trying to remember because there's a difference between how it displays on Instagram versus Facebook.
Mm.
So under 40, under 30 characters, but just emphasizing that it's a book, because that's the biggest problem that you have with the video, where on Facebook, this has always been a problem with any type of ad that you run, where you can run ads for movies and TV shows and skincare creams and clothing and all sorts of other things that aren't books. And people will click on your ad and think, okay, this guy in a suit, maybe it's advertising, a clothing store or something, and it's not. So that's easier to do with the static images, where you either put the book cover on the image, or you have an excerpt that kind of indicates it's a book, and you also have free and Kindle Unlimited in the headline, or new book, or some sort of emphasis on the book aspect. The video, since it displays a bit differently, that's more challenging. And also, if you include the cover in the intro, it tends not to perform very well, where the CPC tends to spike up dramatically, where the biggest benefit of the video is that you can get a CPC below 10 cents, and it can actually hold that for thousands of dollars in ad spend if you have a really good video. Now, that's not the norm. I don't want to set anybody's expectations where their CPCs are rising beyond that. That's going to be normal, but the videos hold their CPC better than the static image ads.
Mm.
But if you overemphasize that as a book by putting the book cover on it, it doesn't seem to be beneficial in terms of the CPC, where your video can now be 20 cents or 30 cents or 40 cents and also converting poorly. So that doesn't help you overall. So yeah, those are the 3 main changes that have happened with the Facebook ads again. So to recap, since that was a long discussion there,
I made
you have
lots
the
and
audience
lots
changes.
of notes. Made
Yeah,
lots and lots
you have
and
the
lots
audience
of notes.
changes. Yeah. And then you have the turn off advantage creative enhancements. For the audiences, the best way to just approach that is to test audiences. Also, you may want to test things that are narrowed by Kindle Store. So say you have contemporary romance, I would test that, and then test contemporary romance narrowed by Kindle Store. That may improve the conversion, may not. Still gathering data on a lot of these things. And then video, if you're looking to lower your CPC and get the lowest cost per unit possible and sustain that over time, then video is the best way to do that. But just be prepared for a potentially long and arduous testing journey. But the benefit of that is that if you get a video that works, it can last much longer than a static image ad. And also you can potentially translate that over to TikTok and other video platforms. And by the way, if you have a TikTok that works well, that's viral, or it's just exceeding the average view count on your profile. So maybe you get an average of 500 views and you have a TikTok that got 2,500, test that as an ad. That's a good way to shortcut the testing process. Those are more likely to work, and they don't definitely work, but good to test. And be sure to remove any licensed music and the TikTok watermark, because otherwise the licensed music is going to lead to problems if you run it as an ad. So just replace that with a stock music track that you have licensed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. That's some really good
Yeah, my
advice. Thank
gosh.
you.
Yeah.
Glad I asked that question. So we have definitely come to the end of the interview now. Thank you so much, Nick. I feel like we've kept you a long time here, but it's been fascinating. It's I'm really interested in everything you have to say, so that's really cool. So if someone wants to find out more about any of the topics we've talked about, or anything else about what's happening in with AI or whatever else, where's the best place to find you? Where should they go?
I'd say just head over to my website at nicholaserik.com. So that's NICHOLAS and then Erik with a K. And just sign up for the newsletter. It's free. And if it
It's a great
resonates with
newsletter.
you, great.
Yeah, it's a good
You know,
newsletter.
if it doesn't, then anything else I do probably won't. So that's a good place to start. It is free to
Awesome.
sign up. So
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah,
Awesome.
and we're, I think, all signed up, so we definitely
Yeah, we are.
value the things.
One of the few that
100%.
survived my inbox declutter.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
Yeah. And Shah,
And we can be found at spargirlspodcast.com. We're on Patreon at Spargirls Podcast if you'd like to come along and join our private Facebook group, which we share all kinds of additional behind the scenes information and tips.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed yourselves here with us today.
Sure
We'll be
have.
back again next week. But for now, farewell.
Keep well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.